This is more of a rant than a real training exercise, but I want to give some thoughts on some of these random oral testing. Oral testing, and I put that in quotations, you know. Um, I had a junior high school, second year students, that I had to run about 200 people through oral testing. And each student, I was allotted 1 minute to spend with each student and ask a series of questions that I did not produce. I was not involved in producing the questions myself. They were to come into the room and they were supposed to state their name and their student number. Sometimes the students were a little nervous and they didn't get their name and their student number out just right. And, that happens. But for the most part, I think students that did prepare for this type of oral speaking exercise uh, did came in knowing that they were supposed to speak not in their native language but must express themselves properly in English. And students that are nervous, they usually can't handle two languages at the same time very well. Um, for example, I had a few little problems because the actual teacher who made the questions was in the room. And when a student walked in the room and hesitated, stating their name and their student number, simple enough, the teacher would say, and the student, once they got pulled out of the English mode and put in the Japanese mode, they got all flustered and a lot of precious seconds were lost. And there, might have been some rough spots in the first part because I wasn't really that clear on the categories of the questions that the teacher wanted to put in. Maybe a little miscommunication there, but it got refined throughout the process. But my advice to the teacher, or who is the outsider basically, once I am appointed as a judge or the assessor for the 1 minute tests, you need to leave me the hell alone. I mean, really, because I am very experienced in doing this because I've been an examiner for the second stage of the ACAN test. I've been an examiner for the speaking part of the Kokuden ACAN. And in 20 years, I've gone through many types of these interactions. And there's a lot on my mind because if I do know some of the students, I have to erase what I know from their past history from my mind. There's a lot on my mind. I have to constantly correct if there is some sort of just remove any sort of positive or negative bias that I might have when they come in. So there's just so much on my mind there. The questions, the quality of the questions themselves. We start out with, hi, how are you? And how old are you? That's fair enough. And the teacher had categorized these into level 1, 2 questions from level 1, 2 questions from level 2, and perhaps 1 question from level 3. Level 3 being presumably the most difficult, but that wasn't always the case. For example, she had the question, I had to ask the students, which color do you like? Which subject do you like? Which food do you like? One of those categories. Well, as a native speaker, actually, I don't use that type of pattern. I might use what's your favorite color? Because when you use the word which, if they have been trained properly, they will expect a choice between 2 items, or they would expect to hear the conjunction or in the question. If it's phrased as what subject do you like, it may be construed as you're only to say one subject or something like that, but it's very easy if you say what's your favorite subject. They can say I like math. And that's the way they had been trained, and that was actually in their first year junior high school book. And in communication, you do have to have the tolerance for ambiguity. One student took me by complete surprise because Japanese junior high school students have extremely limited English skills, and I was going through the questions and I was asking him the questions, and he said pass. I might have asked him, I think, how old are you? And he thought for a minute and said pass. And it took me by surprise, but I remembered from watching many game shows as I was growing up that pass simply means throw the question to the side, put it back in the old hamster wheel, and go to the next question. And at the end, ask the same question again. So that's what I did. And the teacher went ballistic. Says, "Oh, that wasn't fair. You asked him the same question twice." Well, what I liked was that that student, in particular, used one of the three competencies of communicative English. First competency would be grammar competence. Second would be the socio-linguistic competence. But he used the third one, my favorite, strategic competence. He used strategy and where he took control of the conversation by saying pass. So I thought he was perfectly entitled to be asked that same question again. He didn't say, I don't know. If he would have said, I don't know, I would have gone to the next question, never gone back to it. But he said pass. So I think in that case, this was a very slow student, and he actually knew a little bit more about how to communicate than his English teacher did. But, I thought it was, it was an exercise. It was useful because out of 200 people, I had come up with some sort of rough score. I had a hard time grading them on intonation because with world Englishes coming out and English being a global language, there's just so many different types of intonation. And some of the best students speak like, hello, my name is, but they have excellent communication skill. Um, their vocabulary and their syntax is all in place, but that's just the way they speak. I mean, people could critique my style of speaking, and I'm a native speaker. So I didn't really want to penalize them too much on intonation because, I mean, it's not something that's really matured at the junior high school level. So there was a lot of problems I had with the test. I was a little worried that it might demotivate some of the students. I didn't like that I wasn't involved in any of the process, and there's teacher would come back to me a couple days later and says, "Oh, I didn't think that person spoke that well, but you gave him a high score." "Oh, I thought that student spoke well, and you gave him a low score." It's like, look, you asked me to be the assessor and the judge, and I gave him the best judgment. I pulled every bit of ethical character that I had to do this, erasing bias. It was imperfect, and I suggest that she does her job and encourages them to get more outside assessment. But as far as these 40 students that I have identified as being good speakers, I'm going to try to interact with them more and refine it, and maybe I can recommend someone for next year's speech contest, as these might be potential strong candidates for that. And so in that respect, I think that it may have been a success. But the final advice is, once you appoint a judge, leave him the hell alone and let him do his job.